And what position do you hold at your company?
Yeah, so I am a data scientist on our analytics team. Specifically, I focus on product analytics. So what that entails is whenever somebody comes on our website, on our mobile app, we collect data around like every single thing they do. So every interaction, every page load, anything you search for, every like keystroke or click, we are collecting a bunch of data so that we can understand what people are doing on our sites. And then my job is to use that data to kind of understand how can we build a better user experience. So I work very closely with product managers. So those are folks on the technology team who kind of like own different parts of the experience and they manage the work that the engineering teams do. And so my role is to kind of work closely with the product managers to understand like what questions do they have, what decisions are they trying to make, and how can we make a more data informed decision to make sure that we're building the experience that is going to meet our users' needs.
I didn't know like what, kind of entailed in that position, but it's really interesting kind of see the perspective of what you kind of do and get that insights. But yeah. And what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
I'm an individual contributor, which just means that I don't manage anyone else. I just kind of manage myself. Of course, I have a boss, but and so day to day can be a little bit different, but essentially everything I do kind of comes back to like what are people doing on our product and how can we like make better decisions for kind of like the product roadmap. So that's basically like what are the plans for how we're going to improve the online experience. And so what that actually looks like is doing a lot of A/B testing. So if you've ever taken a statistics course, you maybe learned about hypothesis testing. And so in the business world, we just call that A/B testing, or maybe like experimentation or test and learn, or a few other terms. But in the product world, that's basically you have a hypothesis. You know, if we make this change, we're going to see this different outcome, and we want to test that. So 50% of our users will see the current experience, and then 50% of users will see this other changed experience. And then we'll pick a success metric to decide how are we going to figure out what is a better experience. Um, and so I help with things like coming up with those hypothesis statements, doing test design, making sure we're collecting the right data. And then once the test launches, was it set up correctly? And then actually monitoring the data and doing the analysis and making recommendations at the end. So a lot of it is very much based in statistics, the exact same things you would learn in a statistics course. We're applying that when we do A/B testing. But you also have to have some product sense and familiarity with the product you're working on, and then also understanding of like the business goals and the success metrics and which ones are truly a good signal of success for your business. So there is a bit of business knowledge that you need to pair with your statistical knowledge. So that's a big part of our job is A/B testing. And then there's a lot of, for some product analytics teams, including mine, you have to do a lot of work around data collection. So data doesn't just magically appear. There's usually something put in place to make sure you are getting the data you need. Our solution right now is a bit manual, so we have to work very closely with the engineering teams to make sure that as people are coming onto our site and doing different things that we're collecting the data that we want. And so on the product analytics team, we have to do a lot of documentation that we hand off to engineering to say like when someone comes on and they load this page or they do this action, we want to, collect the data in this way. These are the values that we want to see, and then checking to make sure that data is showing up. So that can be another big part of product analytics. And then there's just also doing a lot of like just reporting and insights. So working with the product managers, trying to understand, what questions do they have? What do they want to know about the users? Maybe they want to know how different types of users are behaving. So doing analysis to kind of understand maybe different like behavioral personas. So that might be just some straight, reporting and insights and descriptive statistics. You can also maybe do some predictive modeling as well. And then with more predictive modeling, you can look at, how can we kind of impact different outcomes? If we want to increase certain actions, we might do some predictive modeling to understand, what can we do to impact that? And just I do a lot of like data visualizing and like descriptive statistics as well. And then you also have to do presentations. It really depends on how many projects you're working on, um, how many teams you support. But for any big project you do, expect that there's going to be presentations involved. But even for smaller tasks, you're still going to have to present your findings to maybe a smaller audience. So being a good communicator, of course, is also very important. And putting together presentation materials or putting together kind of a summary of your thoughts and recommendations is also something that you'll commonly do.
Hmm. And what do you like about your job?
So I'm a very literal person, looking back on like all of my studies when I was younger, I kept gravitating towards, things that were very analytical, very literal. I loved math, you know, things like English and literature and all that symbolism, I didn't love that as much. So I love that this is a field where I get to be very literal every single day. And that's like expected of me. Like I will correct people if they use the term like significant incorrectly, because in statistics, like that has a meaning. Um, and so I like that this is a field where I can be very precise. Um, and I love math, so I love that I get to use math. I also like that there's always something new to learn in analytics and data science. So there's, of course, all of the math and statistics and predictive modeling and all the new concepts and new software. There's always something new you can learn. But this is also a field that can be applied to almost any like business or industry. And so you can kind of change it up. Previously, I worked in marketing before working in product analytics. I worked in marketing analytics. I've also worked in real estate, and now I work in like tech, specifically travel tech. So I do like that it's, just a field where you can be a lifelong learner. I find that really exciting. To some people, that might sound exhausting, but for me, I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I get that too. I love to learn about new stuff. So, yeah, that's why I gravitated towards this too, because that was one of the key components to this of learning stuff just on the job. And I was really intrigued by that because I don't know, I'm just quite a learner. But yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you not like about your job?
So, kind of, I guess, a continuation of given that it's a field where there's always something to learn, you have to, it's very easy to fall into feeling like imposter syndrome because you're always finding things that you don't know because there's always something to learn. And yeah, it can be a struggle to feel like other people know more than you and you don't know enough. But really it's not that you don't know enough, it's that there's just so much. And I've never met anyone in this field who knew everything. Um, and so I like to remind myself that, no one knows everything, but everyone knows something. And a good, analytics or data science team is going to be like staffed in such a way that we complement each other. Another thing that can be a challenge is just like working with the data, which, that's your job. You're working with data all the time. But as I mentioned, like data doesn't just exist. You have to collect it. And so you have to like have documentation and you have to have an intentional process for collecting your data. And it's very common, down the road to realize like we should have been collecting data maybe in a slightly different way, or there's something we missed, or there was something inaccurate. Maybe there was an outage and we weren't collecting data for a period of time. So, data is always going to be messy, even at very big established companies. That's just the nature of like data collection. It's never going to be 100% perfect and 100% the way you need it. There's always going to be some kind of nuance or something that you have to account for, which can be frustrating. And then also just like the amount of data, getting your like computer set up in a way that can handle the amount of data you're working with. Sometimes it takes a lot of like, you have to figure things out and download things and connect to things. And, um, it's, you almost never can just like open up your laptop and start working. Like there's a whole process to like be able to work with that amount of data. And sometimes that can be frustrating. Because like, I just want to do my job.
That actually has me asking the question. And I just thought of it. Like, what kind of computer would you recommend to handle all the data in the future, or does your company supply it, or would you have to provide? on your own your computer?
Yeah, so your company will supply your laptop for you
Hmm.
because number one, like they should give you the equipment you need to do your job. And number
Hmm.
two, because of data privacy, they're going to want a laptop that has like the security controls in place.
Hmm.
So the laptops that I've been given for my current job is a Dell Latitude is my work laptop. And
Yeah.
then for my personal laptop, I use a ThinkPad, which is actually with previous companies, I have worked on a ThinkPad. This is my own personal ThinkPad that I purchased, but I just really liked the ThinkPad. I found it was just like a really easy to use laptop. And so that's what I have for my own personal use. Um, and that's what I used when I was getting my master's degree in data science. Most of what you're going to be doing is going to be connecting to a cloud. So as long as you have like a fully functional like Windows. I've always used Windows, but a lot of my colleagues have a Mac or an Apple. It's perfectly fine. Um, I think the only thing I would advise against, I've never used a Chromebook. My understanding of Chromebooks is they're not like fully functional laptops.
Hmm.
So I would not recommend that. But yeah, just like a ThinkPad or a Dell should be fine.
Nice. And how did you get into your job? Would that be like education, training?
Yeah, so it's kind of a long story. I'll try to keep it succinct. It was not like a direct path.
Hmm.
So kind of going back to the beginning. So going back to when I was in high school. So this was in the late 90s. I'm old. I'm an elder millennial. So when I was, in high school, it was in the late 90s, and I learned like HTML. The internet was very new, and I was learning HTML, and I thought it was so cool that you could just like write some code and have like a website, and like the world could see whatever you put out there. And I was like, I want to be a webmaster. I want to major in computer science. This is so cool. I got to college. I took my first computer science course. It was really hard. And back then, like we weren't as connected, this was back in the year 2000. We weren't as connected then as we are now. Like we didn't have social media. Like the only people who were like your mentors or whatever were people you literally knew, in your life, maybe people you met in class or your professors or your parents, and neither of my parents were technical people. So basically, I didn't have anyone to tell me, like, yeah, the first computer science course is like a weed out course. Like, it's designed to be hard. Um, and, I just got really intimidated basically and was like, you know what, this isn't the right career path for me. I want something that's more fun and glamorous. So I ended up studying communication because I wanted to work in like public relations or advertising. So I got my degree in communication, graduated, and got my first job was at a nonprofit promoting accounting conferences, doing marketing for accounting conferences. And I realized that like marketing, PR, advertising is not an inherently glamorous industry because there's so many things that are not fun and exciting that need to be promoted. Especially if you're like an entry level candidate, that's where you're going to find yourself. And I also realized like I didn't like marketing. I didn't really like writing, and all of that, but that's what I studied. Um, and so I left that first job and got a new marketing job with a hospital system, which was a really cool experience. I had a really great boss. I really liked working there, and I got to do all different types of things in marketing, which further validated that like this was not the right career path for me. But I didn't know what else to do. But eventually we started doing like social media marketing. And with that, along with like our website, which the marketing team managed, came analytics and being able to get like data around how many people are visiting our website, how many Facebook fans do we have, et cetera. And I really loved working with data. But back then it just didn't really seem like that was like a job option for me because I hadn't ever taken like a statistics course, for example. I didn't have any training in how to work with data. I was just kind of like exporting things to Excel and trying to figure things out on my own. But I really enjoyed it. And then I left that hospital system and got a digital marketing job with a commercial real estate company. And that was when I was able to move into a proper marketing analytics role because that team at that commercial real estate company, the marketing team, like tripled in size. Like the CEO was like, marketing is the next big thing for our company. We're going to put all this money into the marketing team, so we're going to expand it. And so with that expansion, they created marketing analytics roles. They brought in like someone who's experienced in marketing analytics. And because I had been doing some like data analysis, albeit it was just like in Excel and using like Google Analytics, they were like, we're going to move you, Maggie, we're going to move you into a marketing analytics role. You're going to do that full time now. And at first I was like, not really sure about that because I'm like, I don't know anything about this field. And what if I want to keep doing more of the digital marketing that I've been doing, even though I knew in the back of my mind I didn't love it. And they were kind of like, well, this is where we're putting you. You don't really have a choice. Like when you get reorganized in a company, a lot of times you're just put where they put you. But it was a blessing because once I started learning from people who had done analytics and like seeing all the tools they use, like Power BI and R, I was blown away. I'm like, this is the coolest thing. And it reminded me of like way back when I started, I learned like HTML and programming and back in high school when I like loved math. And it just kind of reminded me of like, this is something I was kind of interested in. I just didn't really know what the career opportunities were at the time. And so I kind of landed in here despite my best efforts and loved it. And so at that point, I was like, okay, I have all these skill gaps because I have, a liberal arts degree and come from a more marketing background. So I enrolled in a master's degree program part-time to get my degree in data science. And eventually landed in my current role doing product analytics. So that is the long story of how I unintentionally ended up in this career, but absolutely loved it.
That is inspiring. I just it's, I'm in a career exploration class, so he talks a lot about how it's never really one way. And
Mhm.
again, to hear that and stuff and to kind of want to be in this role, it's inspiring to hear that because I've been through many classes where I couldn't, figure it out. But yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, and I will say the majority of my coworkers in analytics and other people I've met in analytics did not start their careers in analytics. For one reason, because we are old enough that analytics wasn't a career, it wasn't like booming when we started our careers. But also, yeah, we just kind of found our way. Like my boss started in like, I think accounting or finance. I have another colleague who was working in like business development. I had another former colleague who also started in marketing. So I think having kind of more of that like business background and then going into analytics is extremely helpful because you really, like I said, you have to marry like the business knowledge with the technical skills. And so if you're only learning all the technical skills and you never develop that business knowledge, you're not going to be as impactful. And so sometimes like doing that detour to get those business skills can really pay off.
Going off that, if you kind of knew that you wanted to go into data science, what would you recommend your path being? That makes sense.
Yeah,
Like,
I would have gotten a degree in statistics and minored in computer science. Like if I was 18 years old and maybe also did like a minor in business just to like, as I said, get that business background. But yeah, I would have majored in statistics.
and
Yeah.
do you have any other tips on kind of breaking into this industry?
Yeah, I would say like networking is extremely important. The job market right now is very competitive. And I think networking can help with like job leads and job referrals, but also I think networking is important even when, the job market is good. It's important to talk to as many people as possible about their jobs because like analytics and data science as like job titles are kind of vague and they're going to be a little bit different at every company and in different industries. So talking to a lot of people about like what do you actually do in your job can really give you a lot of insight into like the different career paths and kind of niche areas within this field. Because what I do focus on product analytics is going to be really different from someone who's in more of like a machine learning engineer role or maybe like in a research role or even other parts of the business like marketing or supply or sales. Their jobs are a little bit different from me, just focused on like product analytics. So definitely like talking to people and kind of learning like what are the opportunities out there and then what are the like skills that you need to get those jobs.